you know we need networks. So it's easy for us to get clouded. It's easy for us to lose sight of what are we supposed to do. So as the city of Markham, what are we supposed to do? Because you got all this cool stuff. What is it? It's simple. Let's put networks into our buildings. Let's create the standard. You can drive from the developer side, but it's a hell of a lot easier if you don't approve a building permit until it hits certain targets of what we know we need. We know we need this stuff. It's obvious. So I profoundly state no more dumb buildings. There shouldn't be another building built without a network-centric architecture. There should not be another building built that is not connected to fiber with the connectivity that we know we need. When we come to speak at these things, and I was speaking with Jim Grotmans, who's up next before, I'm not here because there's anything for Tridel. He's not here because there's anything for his company. We're not here because we're trying to sell something. We're here because we're Canadians. And we believe but the bottom line is that's the truth. We're here because we're looking to the prosperity, the future prosperity of this country. We're pushing because this is what we believe. We believe in the country. This is important. We're here pushing this because we can make a difference. This is the place. This is the place where we can take a step. So being in front of the city of Markham, we've been in front of the town of Newmarket. We'll be in front of anybody we need to be because we believe in this. This is fundamental to the future growth of Canada. Thank you.
Our final speaker before we move into the panel discussion is Jim Grotmans, principal at the ET Group. He is an entrepreneur with experience in startups, fast-paced growth companies, and large corporate organizations. Focused primarily in the technology sector, he has spent many years helping companies integrate new technologies into their businesses. Currently, he's the owner and principal at ET Group, a technology integration company specializing in collaboration solutions for business and government. Jim is also chair of the Newmarket Economic Development Advisory Committee, a member of the iCanada Board of Governors, and a past chair of the Newmarket Chamber of Commerce. Please help me welcome Jim Grotmans.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Well, I have to say I'm very excited to be here. I'm excited for Markham. I'm excited for York Region, and I'm excited for Canada. As Ted outlined, we're here because we think that these are important activities to take forward for Canada. It's about our productivity as a nation. It's about our quality of life as people. And so, Howard, congratulations to getting this going, to you and your team. I'm thrilled to be here. And I think we've had a good progression this morning in terms of the topics that are coming into play. So we started off with a kind of a broad picture of what's going on in the internet and how everything is becoming connected. Rick did a great job of that. Mansell started talking about how technology is really even driving right to machines. So the machines are talking to each other. There's a lot of automation going on, and that's just exploding. And he showed you how the simple applications of those can improve our quality of life. And then Ted has really brought that down into buildings and give you a really great, clear picture of the savings and the opportunities there. And what was interesting to me as we got near the end of Ted's presentation was that the questions started coming out that were not really about the technology. They're more about people questions. And Janet asked a question earlier about how do we help people adopt this technology? How do we get usage up or get them to understand that? And so that's what I want to talk to you about a little bit today. It's not so much about technology, it's about how do we help each other, help our communities get organized in a little different way. So let's see if I can figure out this technology. Oops, the other way. Apparently I can't. Yes, no, that's human failure. There we go. So we're here today kicking off Smart Markham. And what is that about? It's about Markham wanting to break out, wants to change things in a different way, probably some radical way, accelerate the good things about the community. And how do we do that? And all communities are like that, all across the world. And some of them are doing that because they're at points of crisis, right? If they're heavily relied on one industry or one kind of income stream for their town, and that goes away, they got a serious problem, they got to rethink it. I don't think Markham's there. I think Markham is a fantastic place. Got a lot going for it. It's the tech hub of Canada. But the mayor made some very interesting comments this morning saying, we know that, but we can't stop there. We need to keep going. So it's about breaking out. And smart communities, intelligent communities, are about solving big things, problems, solving for X. And if you think about that, I borrowed this slide from an organization called Solve for X, and they illustrate it this way. There's a huge problem. There's lots of technology out there. There's lots, and it'll continue to evolve faster than we can absorb it. But how do we take that and put a radical solution together? And where those three overlap, we come up with something fantastic that takes us forward. So how do we do that? Well, we have to do that in a different way than we've been doing it. There's a new paradigm, a new way to organize all these kinds of things that we have to start to think about. And so before I go into the new, I want to just talk just briefly about our old ways. How did we organize ourselves in the past, for the past thousands of years? We've done that through institutions, so schools, corporations, military, religions, and governments. So we have these great institutions that have helped us organize people and ideas and mobilize projects and progress. So some of the attributes of these organizations is that they're very large, they're exclusive. Generally, we're part of one religion or another. We live in one city and are governed by that government versus another. They're highly organized. They tend to have a strict governance around them, and that's why they work. They have a very hierarchical management structure. All great things when you're trying to organize in a very specific environment or a specific goal. However, the reality is that they limit flexibility and they limit innovation. And I acknowledge today we have a very innovative city that we're in right now. We have very innovative companies that are presenting to you. But still, there are limits to those, to the government and to those companies and my own company. We have limits to what we can do because of the structure that we have. So when we think about new projects or new ideas, they tend to get put in a framework of these limits, and they either get an approval or a rejection. Here's an idea, we're either going to do it, yes, it gets approved, or it gets rejected. So it's just some of the attributes of these models. And we all know this, it leads to siloing. So whether it's the institution itself is a silo amongst other silos, other institutions, or there's silos within our the institution themselves, departments or organizations within a company siloing in there. And so that is a big inhibitor to progress and innovation. So how do we move now to a different way of organizing so that we can harness all of the ideas, all of the value that sits across those silos and put them all together? Mash up, it's a great term. But how do we bring all this stuff together? In a community collaboration, how do we manage all of that without building another institution, right? That's the challenge that we have in front of us now. So when we think about Markham, and these are just a small representation of the stakeholders within the city, but there's the municipality itself, there are businesses, there are schools, there are healthcare, transportation, and very importantly, citizens, individuals. All of these are stakeholders in the community. How do we pull them together? How do we engage them? Janet, I want to go back to you and thank you for your question earlier. How do we bring all of this great opportunity that you've been hearing about this morning and bring that to the people and then pull their input back into the discussion? How do we take that discussion that was starting here a few minutes ago and begin to harness that to move forward more quickly? So I would put to you that we're looking to build different ways of interaction, collaborative interactions versus institutional. Collaborative interaction that requires all of those institutions to participate, but not necessarily only within their models. So new partnerships. What are some of the attributes of collaborative organizations? Well, first of all, they're very inclusive. They include people from different religions, different countries, different walks of life, and should be open to all stakeholders and anyone that says, I'm interested in helping, I'm interested in learning. So very inclusive. They can be very innovative, flexible, and agile. And these are the things, when you think about, and I speak from my experience in Newmarket. I do a lot of work up there. So when we speak about the town generally, and I don't mean to pick on them because I think they're very typical, but do we think about speedy? Do we think about agile? Do we think about flexibility? Probably not too naturally, right? So how do we get to that? There definitely needs to be some kind of loose governance model around organizing all of these people, but it can't be so tight, can't be so rigid as to create some of the problems we have in our institutions. And so what do? We use technology for that organizational management. You know, it's the great promise and the great delivery of things like networks, of machine to machine. The machines can take care of so much now. We don't have to think about it. And not to make us dumb. I appreciated those comments and questions earlier. But to free us up to raise our level of engagement and curiosity and learning beyond what we had to do before, because the machines can handle that. So what we end up with is a messy vibrancy. This is not, it's not going to be very smooth and easy to do. I promise you. We're living this. I'm living this on a daily basis, and many other communities are too. But what it does bring is a different energy that can engage and get things going. Very important here is that we operate on a principle of shared value as our ultimate goal of working together, as opposed to other things like common goals. So we often put this out that, we're aligned and we're working well because we have common goals. Well, I will put to you that having shared values is even more powerful than that and helps keep us on track as we work through those messy, difficult parts. So what might those values be? Things like, we should include an ability for everybody to participate if they want to. This is one of our principles. How do we connect everybody? We have this discussion going on in Canada now, rural broadband. How do we make sure that people who live outside of the core cities have the same ability to access the internet and at the same kinds of speeds as those folks who live near big hubs? So putting those shared values up forward is really important. The operating mode here is not approved or denied. It's here, let's just get started. Let's start moving and see where it takes us. And I think all of our speakers so far this morning spoke to that a little bit, is we don't always know where we're going. We don't know what the benefits are. We may not be able to have a hard business case that says if we do this, we're going to get that. We know we're going in the right direction because we're operating on values that we've agreed to. So helping us get started. So how do you do all that? That's all, pretty high level, highfalutin ideas, but how do you do that? So how do you move from ideas to projects to reality? A long time ago, I was trying to think about this, and you probably can't read it very well, but there's a lot of questions that come up, and so that's the challenge that a community will have to face. How do we bring these stakeholders together? And then how do we bind them together on a regular basis and start to answer these things, right? There's governance issues. There's funding issues, okay? So, well, if it's not the city doing it itself, how do we fund these projects? Maybe they kick in, but who else can help pay? Will the federal government be interested in this? And if they are, who is the best person to put a request forward? Is it a nonprofit? Is it a for-profit? Is it a municipality? So what are those kinds of questions? How do we train our users? How do we engage our users for all of that interaction? So we have a lot of things to figure out in this, and I think Ted said it as well. This is a journey, and I think Rick and Mansell probably did as well. This is a journey. We're getting started. We're moving forward. We don't have all the answers yet, but this is a model to help us move there. And down on the bottom, we say these intelligent community projects. So we've been talking about a lot of these things this morning, right? Smarter transportation, smarter healthcare, smarter energy. So we have, you've heard today, there are no lack of these kinds of technologies, no lack of ideas. The thing is, what do we do first, right? First of all, why are we doing this? Who decides what we do? What are we going to do first? Who's going to take action? And then how do we measure the impact? We need to do this on a community basis. Can't be just the city doing it, can't be just the province doing it, or a company. It can't be those silos. It needs to be on a community basis. So this is just a model that we've been working on in Newmarket. So there's kind of 4 layers to it. There's a governance, a charter, and rules of engagement. So it's very light on that. It's loose on that, but we have some ways that we understand will operate together. And where we're focusing is on projects. So out of this effort that's been going on a couple of years in Newmarket, we now have 3 or 4 projects that are engaging different groups of partners in the community that are moving faster or got started where they couldn't before. So one is broadband. We've been talking about broadband in Newmarket for a long time, and people just, and certainly the council couldn't get their heads around where to go with that until this group somehow found a way to get them going. And so there's a small project going to go on called the Gigabit Mile, which is we're not going to take on the whole town and try and figure out a broadband strategy there. We're going to take a small key piece, and we're going to start there, get that broadband capacity up, and then see what comes out of that and build some initiatives there. We have another, our hydro utility has a challenge around community engagement. So they are tasked by, at the province level, to provide a community energy plan. And the CEO has been saying, I can't do that by myself. Whenever I try and deliver a report to the community that has been driven only through the utility, I just run up into barrier after barrier after barrier. So he said, how can we bring this group together to bear and look at things a little differently? And so now there's some projects going on. IBM has brought some technology, and we had a zero footprint slide up on here from one of the other presentations. And it's just an engagement project, starting small, where the community will begin to see in a small portion the energy usage. There'll be a gamifying of that and some competition, I assume, and begin to engage the community on energy savings. There's an incubation, business incubation effort going on between the hospital, the town, this collaboration ecosystem. So a number of great things are starting to happen and move along where they were stalled before. We're not the only community. There are a growing number of communities across Canada, and in fact across the world, that are trying to figure these out. And this is why I'm so excited about Markham, because you're beginning to move there now. How does that help us? Well, it helps us on a big scale, but I think from a York Region perspective, it helps a lot, because now we're going to have similar conversations. What I would hope, honestly, is that we begin to collaborate on those conversations, and that we really don't get locked into a smart Markham or a smart Newmarket or a smart Waterloo, but we start to think about a smart